Asterisk, 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 asterisk. My name is Albert, and at 32, I have built a decent life as an independent handyman. I wake up every morning in my modest two-bedroom house, grab my coffee, and head to my workshop, where I fix problems that others cannot solve. My hands are calloused, my back sometimes aches, but there is something deeply satisfying about taking something broken and making it whole again. I have regular customers who trust me a savings account that keeps growing steadily, and a girlfriend named Sarah who loves me for exactly who I am. But according to my father, I am just a disappointment compared to my brother Marcus, the successful corporate lawyer with his BMW and penthouse apartment. What happened 3 months ago during our family dinner changed everything between us. And this morning I woke up to 53 missed calls that would flip our entire world upside down. Before I dive into what happened that changed everything, let me know in the comments where you are watching from, and if you have ever felt underestimated by your own family. Hit that like button and subscribe for more real-life stories. Trust me, this one gets intense. Let me paint you a picture of how different my life is from my older brother Marcus. Every day, I drive my reliable Ford pickup truck to job sites across town, carrying my tools and the satisfaction that comes from honest work. My workshop behind my house might not look like much from the outside, but inside it is organized chaos where I restore antique furniture, fix plumbing, disasters, and solve problems that have stumped other contractors. My regular customers call me directly when something needs fixing because they know I will show up on time and do the job right the first time. The money is steady, not spectacular, but enough to pay my bills, save for the future, and take Sarah out for nice dinners on weekends. Marcus, on the other hand, lives in a completely different universe. His penthouse apartment downtown overlooks the river with floor-to-ceiling windows and furniture that costs more than most people make in 6 months. He drives a black BMW that he replaces every 2 years, wears suits that cost more than my monthly mortgage payment, and travels to Paris and London for business deals that involve numbers with more zeros than I can count. At 35, he has never been married, though he dates investment bankers and doctors who look like they stepped out of fashion magazines. Our father, Robert, is a retired mechanical engineer who worked for the same aerospace company for 38 years before retiring 5 years ago. After our mother passed away from cancer, Dad seemed to pour all his hopes and dreams into Marcus, constantly bragging to his golf buddies about his lawyer son, while barely mentioning that he has another child. Every conversation somehow circles back to Marcus and his latest achievement, his newest case, or his growing bank account. The Sunday dinners at Dad's house had become a weekly reminder of where I stood in the family hierarchy. I kept going because I believed family was important, and I thought maybe someday Dad would see value in what I do. That belief was about to be shattered completely. This particular Sunday started like all the others. I parked my truck in Dad's driveway next to Marcus's BMW and walked into the house that still smelled like Mom's cooking, even though Dad just reheats frozen meals these days. Marcus had just returned from a business trip to Paris, and his expensive luggage was still sitting by the front door like trophies from his latest conquest. Dad was already in full praise mode before I even sat down. Marcus had apparently just closed a $2 million deal for his law firm representing some tech company in a merger that would make headlines in the business section. The way Dad's eyes lit up when he talked about Marcus's success made something twist in my stomach, but I pushed it down like I always did. I tried to contribute to the conversation by sharing my own news. I had just finished a complete renovation for the Martinez family, transforming their outdated kitchen into something that would make those home improvement shows jealous. The project took 3 months, and when Mrs. Martinez saw the finished result, she actually cried happy tears and hugged me so tight I thought she might crack my ribs. But when I told this story, Dad just nodded politely and immediately steered the conversation back to Marcus and his international business dealings. The first real sting came when Dad looked at me across the dinner table and said, "Marcus just closed a $2 million deal, Albert. When will you do something meaningful with your life?" The words hit me like a physical blow, but I tried to explain that my work was meaningful in different ways. I told him about the satisfaction I get from solving problems, from seeing a customer's face light up when I fix something they thought was beyond repair. Marcus sat there looking uncomfortable, scrolling through his phone and avoiding eye contact. There was a time when we were kids that he would have jumped to my defense, but those days seemed like ancient history now. The brother who used to build forts with me in the backyard and share his Halloween candy had been replaced by someone who measured success only in dollar signs. Dad was not finished with his comparisons. At your age, your brother was already making six figures. He continued cutting into his steak with more force than necessary. I felt my jaw clench, but I forced myself to stay calm and tried to change the subject to something safer. But Dad was just getting warmed up, and the conversation took an even uglier turn when he started questioning my personal life. The fact that I was still unmarried at 32 seemed to personally offend him, as if my relationship status was somehow a reflection on his parenting abilities. Maybe if you had a real career, you would attract the right kind of woman, he said, not even bothering to look up from his plate. The casual cruelty in his voice made my hands start to shake slightly, but I kept them folded in my lap where he could not see. I mentioned Sarah, trying to keep my voice steady, as I talked about the woman I had been seriously dating for 2 years. Sarah teaches third grade at the elementary school across town, and she has this amazing ability to make even the most challenging kids feel valued and capable. She volunteers at the animal shelter on weekends, makes the best chocolate chip cookies I have ever tasted, and laughs at my terrible jokes, even when they are not funny. She is kind, intelligent, and genuine in a way that feels rare in this world. But Dad was not impressed. A teacher, he said, with the same tone he might use to describe a communicable disease. Marcus dates investment bankers and doctors. He glanced over at Marcus, who was still pretending to be absorbed in his phone, though I could see his face getting red around the edges. That was the moment I started to realize that Marcus was not going to defend me. Throughout our childhood, he had always been my protector. When Tommy Henderson pushed me off my bike in third grade, Marcus marched right over and made him apologize. When I was too shy to ask Rebecca to the eighth grade dance, Marcus gave me a pep talk that boosted my confidence enough to walk across that gym floor. But somewhere along the way to his corner office and luxury lifestyle, he had lost the ability to stand up for his little brother. The silence from Marcus hurt almost as much as Dad's words. Every time Dad took another shot at my career choices or my lifestyle, I looked over at my brother hoping for some sign of support, some indication that he remembered we were supposed to be on the same team. Instead, I got nothing but averted eyes and uncomfortable throat clearing. I decided to try one more time to make Dad understand what my work meant to me. I told him about Mrs. Henderson, an 80-year-old widow who lived alone in the house where she had raised 4 children and spent 47 years of marriage. Her house was falling apart around her, but it was all she had left of her late husband, and she could not bear the thought of moving to an assisted living facility. I spent 6 weeks at Mrs. Henderson's house working for barely above cost because I could see how much it meant to her. I fixed her leaking roof, replaced her ancient plumbing, updated her electrical system, and restored the hardwood floors that had been hidden under ugly carpet for decades. When I finished, her house was not just livable again, it was beautiful. She walked through each room, touching the walls like she was greeting old friends, and when she turned to me with tears streaming down her face, she said I was an angel sent from heaven. Dad listened to this story with obvious impatience, drumming his fingers on the table and checking his watch like he had somewhere more important to be. When I finished, he shook his head dismissively and said, "That is charity work, not success, Albert." And then came the words that would haunt me for months afterward, the sentence that would finally break whatever fragile connection we had left. Dad looked me straight in the eye and said, "You are just jealous of your brother because he is successful and you are just a handyman worker." Time seemed to stop. The words hung in the air like smoke from a fire, and I could feel something fundamental shifting inside my chest. Every year of feeling inadequate, every family gathering where I felt invisible, every casual put-down disguised as concern came crashing down on me all at once. And through it all, Marcus continued to sit there in silence, not even bothering to pretend he disagreed. What happened next surprised everyone in that room, including myself. Instead of getting angry or defensive like I usually did, I felt this strange sense of calm wash over me. I stood up slowly, my chair scraping against the hardwood floor that I had actually helped Dad install 15 years earlier when he first bought this house. I looked directly into Dad's eyes and said, "You know what, Dad? You are absolutely right." My voice was steady, almost conversational, which seemed to catch him off guard. He had been expecting me to argue or get upset like I always did, but instead I was agreeing with him. I am just a handyman worker, I continued, and I could see confusion starting to creep into his expression. And I am proud of every callus on my hands, every satisfied customer, every problem I have solved with these hands that you seem to think are so worthless. The temperature in the room seemed to drop several degrees. Dad opened his mouth to say something, but I was not finished. Thank you for finally making it clear where I stand in this family, I said, my voice getting stronger with each word. It has been really helpful to know that 32 years of trying to earn your respect has been a complete waste of time. Marcus finally looked up from his phone and I could see something like panic in his eyes. Albert, you know I did not mean, he started to say. But I cut him off. Thanks for having my back, brother. Really appreciate the support, I said, not bothering to hide the sarcasm in my voice. What exactly did you not mean, Marcus? You did not mean to sit there nodding while Dad tore me down. Or you did not mean to agree with every word he said. Marcus's face went completely white. I was not agreeing. I was just. You were just what? Being neutral. Staying out of it, I shook my head in disgust. When someone attacks your family, there is no neutral, Marcus. There is only standing up for them, or letting them get destroyed. Dad tried to regain control of the situation. Do not be so dramatic, Albert. I am just being realistic about your situation. I turned back to him, and I could feel something cold and final settling in my chest. Realistic, I asked, or just disappointed that one of your sons chose happiness over your definition of success? Happiness does not pay the bills, Dad shot back, but his voice lacked its earlier conviction. You are right again, I said, reaching for my jacket. Good thing I pay all my bills just fine with my handyman money. Turns out people actually value someone who can fix their problems instead of just creating new ones. Dad's face turned red. Where are you going? We have not finished dinner. I pulled on my jacket and headed toward the door. Oh, we are finished all right. This conversation, this family dynamic, all of it. Marcus finally stood up his expensive suit, looking wrinkled and out of place in the suddenly tense dining room. Albert, wait, he called after me as I reached the front door. I paused with my hand on the doorknob. For just a moment, I hoped he might finally find the courage to say something that mattered, something that showed he remembered what it meant to be brothers. We can talk about this, he said, his voice pleading. Family is family. I turned around one last time and looked at both of them. Dad was still sitting at the table, his jaw set in stubborn defiance, while Marcus stood there looking lost and uncomfortable in his own skin. You are absolutely right, Marcus, I said quietly. Family is family. That is why tonight hurt so much. I walked out to my truck, got behind the wheel, and drove home through the quiet Sunday evening streets. I did not feel angry anymore, just empty and surprisingly free. For the first time in my adult life, I did not have to worry about disappointing my father because I had finally accepted that nothing I did would ever be good enough for him. The 3 months that followed were actually some of the best of my life. Without the constant weight of trying to prove myself to Dad, I threw myself into my work with renewed energy and passion. Word of mouth is everything in my business, and satisfied customers had been recommending me to their friends and neighbors. My schedule was booked solid for the next 2 months, and I had to start turning down jobs. Sarah was incredibly supportive during this difficult time. She never once suggested that I should try to reconcile with my family or that I was being too harsh. Instead, she listened when I needed to talk and gave me space when I needed to process everything on my own. Our relationship grew stronger as I learned to value myself the way she had always valued me. I decided to expand my business and hired Jake, a 19-year-old kid who reminded me a lot of myself at that age. He was eager to learn, respectful of the craft, and grateful for someone willing to teach him skills that would serve him for the rest of his life. Watching Jake's confidence grow as he mastered new techniques gave me a deep sense of satisfaction that no corporate bonus could match. My bank account was healthier than it had ever been, not because I was making more money per hour, but because I was working more hours and enjoying every minute of it. The Martinezes referred me to 3 other families in their neighborhood, and each project led to 2 or 3 more. I was building something real and lasting a reputation based on quality work and honest dealing. But I would be lying if I said I did not think about Dad and Marcus during those quiet months. Sometimes I would drive past Dad's neighborhood on my way to a job site and wonder if he ever thought about what he had said to me. Other times, I would see a BMW like Marcus's and feel a complicated mix of anger and sadness about how we had let our relationship deteriorate so completely. Sarah kept encouraging me to reach out to try to bridge the gap that had opened up in our family. Life is short, she would say when she caught me staring out the window with that distant look in my eyes. Pride is not worth losing the people you love, but I was not ready. The wound was still too fresh, and I was still learning how to live without constantly seeking approval from people who seemed determined never to give it. Then came this morning, and everything changed again. I woke up at 6:30 like I always do, but instead of the gentle sunrise and bird songs that usually greet me, I was jolted awake by my phone buzzing insistently on the nightstand. The screen showed 17 missed calls from Marcus and 12 from Dad, with more notifications streaming in every few seconds. My first thought was that something had happened to one of them, some kind of medical emergency or accident. My heart was pounding as I called Marcus back, and he answered on the first ring. "Albert," he said, and I could immediately tell he had been crying. "Albert, I need your help. Everything is falling apart." The story came out in pieces between Marcus's sobs and Dad's frantic interruptions when he grabbed the phone. There had been a scandal at Marcus's law firm involving falsified documents and bribed officials. Marcus swore he had nothing to do with it, that he was just the fall guy for partners who were covering their own tracks. But it did not matter. His reputation was destroyed overnight. The penthouse was gone, repossessed by the bank along with the BMW and most of his other possessions. His savings had been frozen pending the investigation, and no other law firm in the city would touch him with a 10-foot pole. In less than 48 hours, Marcus had gone from successful corporate lawyer to unemployed pariah, with nowhere to live and no prospects for the future. Dad had been calling me all night, his voice getting more desperate with each message. "Please come home, Albert," he said when I finally answered his call. "Your brother needs family right now. I know I said some terrible things, but he needs help, and you are the only one who can give it to him." I sat on the edge of my bed, still in my pajamas, trying to process this complete reversal of everything I thought I knew about my family's dynamics. The successful brother who had never needed anything from anyone was broken and desperate, while the disappointment son was being begged to come to the rescue. Part of me wanted to hang up and let them figure it out on their own. After all, where was this family loyalty when Dad was tearing me down at dinner 3 months ago? Where was Marcus's concern for family when he sat there in silence while I was being humiliated? But as I listened to Marcus crying on the phone, I realized that this was not about keeping score or getting revenge. This was about deciding what kind of person I wanted to be when someone I loved was in crisis, regardless of how they had treated me in the past. I told them I would be there in an hour. When I walked into Dad's house, I barely recognized my brother. Marcus was sitting at the same dining room table where he had watched me get torn apart 3 months earlier, but now he was the one who looked defeated and lost. His expensive clothes had been replaced by an old t-shirt and jeans. His perfectly styled hair was messy and unwashed, and his eyes were red and swollen from crying. Dad looked like he had aged 10 years overnight. The man who had been so confident in his judgments and so sure of his priorities now seemed confused and frightened by how quickly his definition of success had crumbled. "Albert," Dad said as soon as he saw me, and for the first time in my adult life, I heard genuine humility in his voice. "I owe you an apology. A big one." He struggled to find the right words, his hands shaking as he poured coffee that none of us really wanted. "I was wrong about you, son. I see that now. Success is not just about money or titles or impressing other people. You built something real, something that lasts, something that nobody can take away from you." Marcus looked up at me with eyes that reminded me of the scared little boy he used to be when we were kids and thunderstorms would send him running to my room. "Albert, I lost everything," he said quietly. "My career, my money, my reputation. I do not know what to do or where to go from here." I sat down across from him and really looked at my brother for the first time in years. Stripped of all his expensive possessions and professional achievements, he was just a frightened man who had built his entire identity on things that could disappear overnight. "You can work with me," I said simply. "Learn a trade, rebuild slowly, figure out who you are when you are not defined by your bank account or your job title." Marcus stared at me like I had just offered him a lifeline he never expected to see. "You would do that. After everything, real success is not what you own, Marcus. It is who you are when everything gets stripped away. It is how you treat people, and how you show up for the ones you love even when it is hard. Dad wiped his eyes with the back of his hand. I spent so many years thinking I knew what mattered. I am sorry, Albert. I am sorry for making you feel like you were not enough, when the truth is, you were more than enough all along. We talked for hours that day, really talked for the first time in years. Marcus agreed to work with me to start over from the bottom and learn what it meant to build something with your hands instead of just shuffling papers and making deals. Dad admitted that he had been living through Marcus's achievements because he was afraid his own life had not amounted to much. It was not a magic solution that fixed everything overnight, but it was a beginning. Marcus moved into my spare bedroom temporarily, and every morning he put on work clothes and came to job sites with me. His hands got dirty for the first time in his adult life, and slowly he started to understand the satisfaction that comes from honest work. The lesson I learned through all of this is that you never need to prove your worth to anyone, not even family. True success is inner peace, meaningful relationships, and work that fulfills your soul regardless of how much money it makes or how much recognition it brings. Family love should not be conditional on achievements or status, and sometimes walking away is the only way to show people your worth. Forgiveness does not mean forgetting what happened or pretending it did not hurt. It means choosing to move forward without carrying the poison of resentment in your heart. It means being bigger than the people who made you feel small, not because you owe them anything, but because you owe it to yourself to be free. Looking back now, I am grateful for that painful dinner 3 months ago because it forced me to stop seeking approval from people who were never going to give it. It taught me that my value as a person does not depend on anyone else's opinion of my choices, and that the most important relationship you can have is the one with yourself. Success is not measured by the size of your bank account, but by the size of the impact you make on the people around you. Sometimes the greatest victory is simply knowing your own worth regardless of who recognizes it. Have you ever had to choose between family expectations and your own happiness? Have you learned to find your worth in your own values rather than other people's approval? Share your story in the comments below because I know many of .coms below because I know many of .com. You have faced similar challenges with family members who just do not understand your choices. If this story resonated with you, please hit that like button and subscribe for more real-life stories about finding strength in difficult family situations. And please share this video with someone who might need to hear that their worth is not determined by anyone else's definition of success. Thank you for listening to my story. And remember that sometimes the people who love us the most can also hurt us the deepest. But healing is always possible when we choose courage over resentment. Until next time, keep building the life that makes you proud, regardless of who else understands it.